Hades won 5 Game of the Year awards because dying in that game feels better than winning in most others. That's not an accident, it's the meta progression system. Every death feeds the next run, every unlock reshapes your options. Here's how to build one for your roguelike. Most devs get meta progression wrong in one of 4 ways. First, they don't build one at all. The player dies, starts over, nothing changes, they quit after 3 runs. Second, they build one that's too weak. A few stat buffs that don't feel different, so the player wonders why they're grinding. Third, they build one that's too strong. After enough unlocks, the game plays itself and the skill ceiling collapses. Fourth, and this is the sneakiest one, they make meta progression mandatory. The player can't win without grinding, unlocks first. You see this a lot in mobile roguelikes. The first boss does 50 damage and you have 30 health, and the only way to survive is to grind 20 runs for a health upgrade. That's not a roguelike anymore. That's a mobile game with extra steps. The sweet spot is each unlock feels meaningful but never required. A skilled player can win on run 1. A dedicated player gets rewarded for sticking around. The meta progression doesn't gate the ending, it gates variety. Here's the architecture. A meta progression system has 5 layers. Layer 1 is the run state manager. It tracks everything that exists during a single run and gets wiped on death. Health, items, gold, position, the dungeon layout. Layer 2 is the persistent state manager. It tracks everything that survives between runs. Meta currencies, unlock flags, achievements, narrative progress. Layer 3 is the currency bridge, the mechanism that converts effort inside a run into persistent value outside it. Layer 4 is the unlock registry, a data-driven list of everything the player can earn, what it costs, and what it does. Layer 5 is the balance curve, the math that keeps the whole system engaging across dozens of hours. Each layer is a clean data structure. The whole system is a few hundred lines of code. Let me break down how to build each one. Start with the split between run state and persistent state. This is the foundation everything else sits on. Your run state is ephemeral. When the player dies, it vanishes. Health, inventory, equipped items, the dungeon seed, enemy positions, everything inside that specific playthrough. Your persistent state is permanent. It writes to disk after every run and loads on startup. Meta currencies, unlocked items, achievement flags, character unlocks, narrative triggers, run count, total kills, highest floor reached. The key decision here is what goes in each bucket. The answer is surprisingly simple. If losing it would make the player feel like they wasted their time, it probably belongs in persistent state. If losing it creates tension and stakes during a run, it stays in run state. Health, run state. Losing it is the whole point of the challenge. The gold you picked up depends on your design. If gold is a run resource for buying items mid-run, it's run state. If gold is a meta currency for buying permanent upgrades, it's persistent state. Dead Cells does this elegantly. They have 2 currencies. Gold is run only, cells are meta. When you die, gold vanishes. Cells persist. Hades uses darkness as its meta currency. You earn it during runs, you spend it at the Mirror of Night between runs. The data model for this is straightforward. You have 2 save objects, run state and persistent state. Run state is created fresh at the start of every run and destroyed on death. Persistent state is a single file that gets updated at the end of each run. Never mix them in the same object. Never write persistent state mid-run. Write it exactly once when the run ends, whether by death or victory. A practical pattern. Your run state is a plain object that gets instantiated when the run starts and garbage collected when it ends. No save file, no serialization. It just stops existing. Your persistent state is a JSON file or a binary blob that loads on game starts, stays in memory during the run, and gets written in one shot when the run concludes. If your game crashes mid-run, the player loses their run progress but keeps all their meta progression. That's the correct behavior. You never want a crash to corrupt the persistent save. That's your foundation. Get this split right, and everything else builds on top cleanly. The currency bridge connects run state to persistent state. When the player finishes a run, the bridge extracts value from what they accomplished and converts it into something persistent. There are 3 types of currencies to think about. Run-only currencies like gold and ammo that reset every run. Meta currencies like cells, darkness, or experience points that persist and accumulate. And achievement flags, binary markers like beat the first boss or reached floor 5. These aren't spent, they're earned, and they unlock things automatically. Your currency bridge runs exactly once per run at the moment of death or victory. It looks at what the player did, calculates the meta currency earned, and writes it to persistent state. Dead Cells calculates cells based on enemies killed. Hades awards darkness based on rooms cleared. Vampire Survivors awards gold based on time survived and enemies killed. The specific formula doesn't matter as much as one rule. The bridge should reward effort, not just success. If a player has a terrible run that ends on floor 2, they should still feel like they earned something. Not as much as a great run, but enough to want to try again. That's what makes the loop sticky. The inverse is also true. The bridge should never punish experimentation. If the player tries a weird build and dies on floor 1, the bridge should still pay out. You want players to take risks during runs. If bad runs feel like wasted time, players will optimize for safety, which means they'll play the same strategy every run, which means they'll get bored and quit. Reward the attempt, scale the reward by how far they got, and always make the payout feel fair. The unlock registry is where most devs go wrong. They start listing cool rewards and stop thinking about the system. A well-designed registry has 3 categories of unlocks, and the ratio between them matters a lot. Content unlocks add new things to the item pool without making the player stronger. A new weapon type, a new enemy variant, a new room layout. The player's power level doesn't change, but their runs have more variety. Power unlocks directly increase the player's stats. More health, more damage, faster movement. These make future runs easier. Mechanic unlocks change how the game plays. A new character, a dash ability, a crafting system, a new biome. These don't just add variety, they add new ways to approach the game. Here's the ratio I recommend. Aim for roughly 50% content unlocks, 30% mechanic unlocks, and 20% power unlocks. Power unlocks are the smallest category because they're the easiest to get wrong. Too many stat buffs and the game loses its teeth. Players stop caring about individual runs because the meta progression carries them. Content unlocks are the biggest category because they're safe and they're motivating. Every new item in the pool is a reason to start another run. I wonder what that new sword does. Is a stronger motivator than I now have 5% more damage. Dead Cells handles this with blueprints. You find a blueprint for a new weapon during a run. You bring it to the collector between runs, and now that weapon can appear in future runs. Your power doesn't change, your options expand. Slay the Spire does the same thing. Win a run with a character and new cards get added to their pool. You're not stronger, you just have more tools to work with. Heijin nails this from a different angle. The Mirror of Night gives you stat options, sure, but the real progression is the keepsakes, the weapon aspects, the narrative events that unlock between runs. Most of what you earn doesn't make you stronger. It gives you more options. That's the design principle. Options over power. Every time you're deciding what to add to your registry, ask yourself, does this make the player stronger or does it give them a new choice? If it's a choice, it's probably good. If it's raw power, be careful, and if you can't decide, make it a content unlock. You can always convert it to a power unlock later if the balance needs it. The last layer is the balance curve, and it's where you tune the entire system. The first principle, your game should be beatable on run 1. A skilled player who understands your mechanics should be able to win without any meta progression at all. Hades does this. Dead Cells does this. Slay the Spire does this. If your game is only winnable after 20 runs of grinding, that's not difficulty. That's a paywall where the currency is the player's time. The second principle is diminishing returns. Each unlock in a category should either cost more or give less. The first health upgrade costs 10 cells, the second costs 20, the third costs 40. This creates a natural deceleration that keeps the player progressing but never lets them run away. Content unlocks should front load. Give the player variety early. New weapons, new items, new enemies. Dump these in the first 10 hours. That's when the player is deciding whether your game is worth their time. Power unlock should backload. Save the biggest buffs for when the player is already committed. The 10% damage boost matters less on run 5 than it does on run 50 when the player is pushing higher difficulty tiers. The third principle is the fresh save audit. Once a month, start a new save file and play from 0 unlocks. If it feels bad, your early game is broken. If it feels easy, your meta progression isn't doing enough. You'd be surprised how many devs skip this. They playtest with their dev save that has everything unlocked, and they never notice that the first 10 runs feel empty. One more edge case that catches people. What about players who grind meta progression before attempting a real win? Some players will deliberately die on floor 1 over and over to farm currency, then steamroll the game with stacked upgrades. There are 2 ways to handle this. You can cap the meta currency earned per run, so there's a minimum effort threshold, or you can embrace it if a player wants to grind for 30 hours before attempting a win. Let them. They bought the game. Let them play it their way. Hades does the second thing, and it works fine because the pact of punishment system means powered up players can dial up the difficulty to match. And the final edge case, every dev forgets what happens when a player unlocks everything. Vampire Survivors has no cap on golden eggs, but each one gives a tiny stat increment. The numbers go up forever, but the gameplay impact flattens out. Hades introduces the Pact of Punishment, a system that lets the player add difficulty modifiers on purpose. Unlock everything and the game doesn't end. It gets harder on your terms. That's the answer. When your progression system runs out, replace it with a difficulty system. Dead Cells does this with boss cells. Each one you earn unlocks a harder difficulty tier with new enemy patterns and modified layouts. The progression feeds directly into escalation, not into power. That's the cycle. Play, unlock, escalate, play again at a higher level. Now here's where AI tools make this faster. The persistent state manager is pure boilerplate. Define your schema. Here are the currencies. Here are the unlock flags. Here's the save format. And Claude Code can generate the entire save/load system in a few prompts. The unlock registry is data-driven design. Give your AI tool your game's stat system and ask it to generate 50 items with effects that don't overlap. It won't get the balance perfect, but it will give you a first pass that covers the design space. Where AI really helps is simulation. Feed your balance curve into Claude and ask, after 20 unlocks, what's the expected power level? If the math shows the player doubling their damage by run 15, you've got a snowball problem. AI can also catch broken synergies. List your unlocks and ask which pairs create multiplicative stacking. If the double damage unlock stacks with the double crit unlock, that's a 4 times multiplier that will trivialize your game. Find it before your players do. Here's a concrete example. You're building a roguelike in Godot. You define your schema, 3 meta currencies, 40 unlock flags, a run counter, and a highest floor tracker. You paste that schema into Claude Code and ask it to generate the persistent state autoload with save, load, and update methods. It gives you a working persistence layer in about 2 minutes. Then you describe your game's stat system, damage, health, speed, crit chance, and ask for 30 content unlocks, 15 mechanic unlocks, and 10 power unlocks, each with a cost and an effect. You get a JSON file you can drop straight into your unlock registry. Is it balanced? No, but you now have a working system with 75 unlocks to playtest, and you built it in an afternoon instead of a week. That's the leverage. The architecture we just walked through is clean enough that an AI tool can build most of it from a description. You focus on the design decisions, what unlocks, what currencies, what balance curve, and let the tools handle the implementation. This is exactly what we build inside AI Craft. The meta progression architecture we just covered, the 5-layer system, the currency bridge, the unlock registry with the 50-30-20 ratio is the same system our community members implement every week. They use AI tools to generate unlock pools from their game stat systems. They test balance curves with simulated runs instead of grinding through 100 hours of manual playtesting. They implement the persistence layer in a weekend instead of a month. And they ship roguelikes that keep players for hundreds of runs instead of 3. If you're building a roguelike and you want to see how AI accelerates the design to playable pipeline, join us at the link below. Please feel free to subscribe and check out the links in the description below.